From the Weather NorCal Command Center, this is your morning update.
American Door Company has been family-owned and operated for over 29 years, supplying Northern California with quality garage doors, garage door openers, and installed with the best service you'd expect from a locally owned company. We serve all of Northern California from Willows all the way to the Oregon state line. Give us a call today.
Happy Friday to you. Well, we're about a week away, a little over a week away, because it's not tomorrow, but it's next Saturday. So a week from Saturday is going to be the Manton Apple Festival. This is a big one for me. I love it. I've been an apple pie judge for it's probably been over 20 years, and I've absolutely loved it. Just an amazing festival. I've seen it really grow. It has grown to be a very popular festival. They've got handmade gifts, crafts, and apple products and pies, food vendors, live music all day long. It is amazing entertainment. So check it out. It is October 4th, next Saturday. So a week from Saturday between 9 and 4 p.m. Be sure to check it out. It's going to be a good time. All right, let's take a look at our weather headlines. We've got another spike in our temperatures below the back of my head going in there. I love my small studio. Dry conditions at least through the weekend, but significantly cooler by next. And when I say significantly, I mean it. You're going to see that here a little bit here. Rain returns early next week. We've got a lot to talk about in our deeper dive forecast, from the cooler temperatures, the rain, and of course, today, we're also talking about a red flag warning. But we're going to get into all of that, especially in our deeper dive forecast a little bit later. But first, for those of you in a hurry, here's your Krueger's Quickcast for your Friday, September 26th. This is that red flag warning I was talking about. Now, remember yesterday, I was talking about the windy conditions, I was talking about the low humidity and the heat, really elevating that fire weather risk, and we really needed to be extra careful on Friday. Well, the National Weather Service shortly after that issued the red flag warning basically for today. It expires at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning, Saturday morning. So let's get you out the door this morning. And it's going to be a mild start to the day. Why? Because the winds are starting to pick up. As the winds pick up, the temperatures start to kind of increase a little bit here. But overall in the mountains, wind's not as strong, so it should be a bit cooler there, generally in the 40s, even some 50s. We did see some clouds move through last night. You see that little boundary that passed through last night? That's out of here, high pressure building in behind it, and that's what's going to give us those hot temperatures. But it's that boundary and that high pressure that's moving in that's going to really help to amplify those winds a bit. So for your Friday, I'm expecting about 97 degrees for Redding, 95 in Red Bluff, and 96 degrees for Oroville. Generally in the 70s and 80s for the mountains north and east of the valley, but 90s for Trinity County, inland areas, and mid to upper 60s for the coast. So let's take a look at your 7-day forecast, starting off with the valley. And yeah, it's going to be another hot day today, but the temperatures start to drop. We're still pretty warm on Saturday, but a significant drop Sunday, an even more significant drop on Monday, and even more of a drop on Tuesday. And how about some wet weather in there too? Maybe even a few isolated thunderstorms, especially on Monday. Now, I think the main event will be Monday, Tuesday, but still a chance for a few isolated showers on Wednesday. Now, for the coast, that may actually linger into Thursday. That's also the case for the inland areas, but for Trinity County, mainly Monday, Tuesday, and maybe some lingering showers on Wednesday. Now, for Siskiyou County, Monday, Tuesday, possibly Wednesday. Modoc County, possibly as early as Sunday, we may see some activity here. This is not a storm moving east to west, but there's actually going to be some instability, maybe some moisture, and there could be some afternoon convection. That is showers, maybe some thunderstorms Sunday for eastern Modoc County, Lassen, and Plumas counties. But I would anticipate that in the eastern mountains, like for example, the mountains of Shasta County, the mountains of Tehama, and Butte County, all staying dry, not until Monday that we see that chance for that rain. That's a look at your Krueger's Quickcast. Now let's take a look at the fires. And the current fires right now, not a whole lot new to report here. In fact, the Dillon fire hasn't reported since the 24th. Today is the 26th. We may get some new reports in here, but it's 90% contained. Now we take you out to the Blue fire, and you can see it is 83% contained. As of noon yesterday, this is the report. So it hasn't really grown in containment here, but certainly at least it's remaining fairly steady. Haven't received any reports since the 23rd on the log fire at 97% containment. Always good news to hear that. Again, there's that red flag warning I was talking about from 5 a.m. until 5 a.m. today. right? It's already come into play here until 5 a.m. Saturday as those winds pick up, humidity, and not to mention that heat. They're the winds. They're pretty strong already by midday, coming out of the north too. So it's the combination of the north winds that dries things out even more. We're talking about gusts possibly over 30 miles per hour. They will subside, it looks a little bit here by the afternoon, and then no longer really an issue by tomorrow morning, right? That's Saturday morning. We go into Saturday afternoon, all right, those winds pick up again. Nothing unusual though, right? Just your standard typical afternoon breezy conditions for Saturday afternoon. Then we go into Sunday. Look at this. We actually have some pretty strong winds for what's known as the Shasta Valley. That's central Siskiyou County. Could see those gusts 40, even 50 miles per hour. We may hear about wind advisories, maybe even a red flag warning or a fire weather watch in that area as we go into Sunday. Just be aware of that. The winds are going to be kind of picking up off and on here over the next couple of days, and especially by Sunday for central Siskiyou County. So the fire weather risk for today, yes, it's high. Why? Again, because of those dry north winds I've been talking about. And look at the humidity levels, 11% Redding, 10% in Chico. They get even lower by the afternoon in the single digits, still the high fire weather risk. Then on Saturday, you can see it's much lower risk, but we go back up to moderate, almost in the high range here for Saturday afternoon. So much better conditions here, at least the fire conditions here on Saturday. And then Sunday, this only goes out to noon, but we may see that fire weather risk get into the high range for central Siskiyou County because of those gusty winds that are expected Sunday afternoon. All right, by the way, this is that time of the year we start to see the change of the colors of the leaves. If you're out and about and you're seeing some beautiful colors and you're taking snapshots, and most likely you will, I'd love for you to share them to Weather NorCal from the free Weather NorCal app. And I think everybody else would love it too because it's very simple. It's a very easy process, and you can share those, and then I share them on this show on the morning update at 6 a.m. and also on Coffee with Krueger in the morning. So yeah, just go to the free Weather NorCal app and share those fall color photos, or maybe just a beautiful photo any way you look at it, your pets, whatever. We'd love to see those photos, so be sure to share those, and we may even share them on social media as well. All right, let's get into your deeper dive forecast. And this is really when we kind of go into everything, right? We really dive deep into the forecast. We've been talking about the potential for rain, so let's get into that. Let's talk about that chance for rain as we go into the weekend. But let's start off with the satellite image. Here's kind of where the story starts. We saw this boundary right here. That moved through last night, brought us a few clouds. But what's happening is it was kind of setting up. It has a bit of... You've heard me say the expression inside slider, where we get these systems that kind of come down on the northeast and then kind of dive down to the south, and that tends to actually generate some pretty strong winds. This, in a sense, has that has some characteristics of that. It's not per se an inside slider, but this, what's going to do is it's creating and helping to create some winds, because that is creating some lower pressure, and then high pressure to the north and west is going to allow us to see those winds pick up. And that's the reason for the gusty north winds that we will see today and elevating that fire weather risk I was just talking about. So let's take a look at Futurecast, because it's going to be dry today and through the weekend. For most of us, let's take a look at that. So, of course, for the rest of the day today, you're looking at sunny skies for the coast. This is expected. This is something we've been talking about, and something the coast has really been enjoying, right? You've been really enjoying some sunny skies and sunny days. There you can see some fog developing around Humboldt Bay by the time we do get into tonight and tomorrow morning. And we're seeing more of that marine layer beginning to make its way back to the coast by the time we get into Saturday. So still some sunshine for some of you, but we're going to start to see more clouds, especially by Saturday evening, Saturday night. And when I say that, I'm talking about the coast, obviously, right? And there's that fog just kind of hugging the coast Saturday night into Sunday, even Sunday midday. Now, what you'll notice here, you see how we're starting to see more clouds begin to develop, at least? This is telling us that we have a little bit more moisture in the atmosphere. We're seeing some afternoon convection. This could allow us, and I do think, and this only goes out to noon on Sunday, if we start to see more of that daytime heating, we may see an afternoon shower or thunderstorm develop, especially to the south here, places like eastern Plumas, eastern Lassen, but maybe even parts of Modoc County. We'll have to watch for that. Be sure to watch Coffee with Krueger. We'll have the latest forecast model data for you, and of course through the afternoon, and we'll take a look at that. In the meantime, if you look closely too, right here. That's the system coming in on Monday, and that's what's going to bring us that potential for that wet weather. So let's take a look at that. There's that wet weather right here. By the way, nice trough of low pressure, cooler air associated with all of that. That's pushing in. Now, this looks pretty impressive. It looks pretty impressive before it hits us. You see a lot of the yellows and oranges in there indicating some of the heavier rainfall. So that cold front, as it pushes through, it's going to do a few things. Number one, our winds are going to pick up. We're going to see rain. At this point, it doesn't look like a ton, but certainly some decent rain coming out of this. And you're also going to be looking at the potential for thunderstorms. Okay, so that is Monday. That's the first punch, right, of moisture. The next one is right here. You see that? This one looks to be a little bit stronger on Tuesday. So this one I think is going to pack a bigger punch. Again, in the form of gusty winds at times. I would say some moderate to maybe even some heavy rainfall at times too, and maybe even some isolated thunderstorms. And you can see that's around midday. So as it goes through the day on Tuesday, that pushes to the east, everyone gets a shot at some of that heavier rainfall. Now, we don't really have any more cold fronts, if you will, to be pushing through on Wednesday, but there's still going to be some leftover cool and unstable air in place, and that's going to allow us to probably still see a few scattered showers. But the main event looks to be Monday, then the bigger push and heavier rainfall on Tuesday, and then Wednesday some scattered showers. And then what you're going to see happen, you see how that's all pushing to the north and east, and we start to dry things out. We have a little bit of ridging right here. See this little bit of a ridge? That's going to allow our temperatures to probably increase, but also allow us to dry things out. So again, real quickly, the timeline, Monday, Tuesday. Those are the two main days we see the rainfall. Of those 2 days, Tuesday we'll probably see the heavier rainfall, and by Wednesday, just some leftover scattered sprinkles and light showers, and then it dries out after that. All right, I typically don't like to do this because it's just all over the place, and this can create a lot of false hope. But here is what the GFS forecast model is predicting through Tuesday, 10 p.m. Overall, I'd say as I look at these numbers, this looks like a pretty good representation of what we're going to see here through Tuesday night. I think most of it's going to be up to the north and west as we typically see. You know, a lot of times these cold fronts, they push through, they start to lose some of their energy once they start hitting the land, right? This starts breaking apart once it hits the mountain ranges, and we see less rainfall as a result off to the east. So typically it's this area that sees the most amount of rainfall, and that's what we're seeing here. So we're talking upwards of an inch or more for parts of the coast, inland, and even out towards, say, places like Trinity County. Now, about a quarter to a half an inch, you know, that looks pretty good. You know, and it could be more than that, honestly. I mean, we're talking maybe a half an inch or more, I would say, in some spots here. But again, your typical areas that don't see as much rainfall would be here. Now, I would say that you'll probably see more in Alturas, Aden, and Susanville, but these are the areas that are probably not going to see as much rainfall overall. Now, we're going to look at a different forecast model through the same time frame. Look at these numbers. For the valley, they are much, much higher. Instead of a quarter to a half an inch, now we're talking 1 to 2 inches in most cases. I think this is way overdoing it, but that kind of puts us kind of within that half an inch to an inch range is what I would say. And this looks much better. I'd say about a quarter to a half an inch possibly off to the north and east. You know, and maybe upwards of 1 to 2 inches along the coast. But again, when these numbers are all over the place, it kind of gives us that false hope, and it kind of gives it that, well, you said this. No, I never said anything. These are all what we call estimates. It gives us, when you look at them, it gives us a general idea of what to expect. And the overall footprint is most of the rain to the north and west, and we see a little bit less as you start heading off to the east of that. But overall, the Climate Prediction Center is putting us in that wetter than normal category, so that's good to see. Hot for today as high pressure is a dominant feature, but that's going to break down, and then there is all that rain I was talking about, right? So this is the cooler air that's associated with it. That's going to be pushing through Monday, Tuesday. Now Wednesday looks to be the coolest, and then that all pushes off to the northeast, and we see this little bit of a ridging right here. So that's going to allow our temperatures to warm back up. Now I don't anticipate to get back into the 90s, but we're talking somewhere around the mid-80s as we get towards the end of next week. So yeah, it's warming up a bit. You can see that here in our trend. There's that big plummet in those temperatures, right? 60s for Monday, Tuesday, and then around 70 on Wednesday. And then we're back up to around the mid-80s, give or take here, come Friday, Saturday into that Sunday. So yes, it's warming up after the storms push through, but not by that much. All right, take a look at those lake levels. And again, we're still seeing those minus numbers indicating that the lakes are still dropping because we're using the water. That's good, right? You like turning on your faucet, you like watering your lawn. Well, it's going to take some water from the lakes. But overall, you take a look at that historical average here, and we are still well above where we typically are for this time of the year. Now, the wave heights today are still fairly high. That's why there's that small craft advisory. But you can see they are beginning to retreat a little bit for your Saturday, but may pick back up again on Sunday as that storm system approaches. So for today, at least for the first half of the day, we're talking north winds at 20 to 25 knots. So probably subside later this evening and tonight, but there is a small craft advisory through today. That will most likely expire later this evening and tonight. Here is your neighborhood forecast, sponsored in part by Dignity Health. So for Trinity County, we got generally 90s, places like Ruth, as we'd expect, around 88, 82 for Smith, or for Mad River, that is. Temperatures, I mean, there's the drop. So for Weaverville, really across the board, here's the deal. Monday, Tuesday, those are the two main days. Tuesday being the day with the heaviest rainfall. Anything we see on Wednesday will be few and far between, isolated, maybe a scattered sprinkle light shower. But for the coast and inland, we may see that linger not only Wednesday, but possibly even some leftover activity on Thursday as well. But same story here for the coast and inland. It's Monday, Tuesday, the main event. Wednesday, Thursday, maybe some scattered sprinkles and light showers, and that would really be the extent of it. Now for Siskiyou County, again, the main event, Monday, Tuesday, maybe some lingering showers on Wednesday. Big dip in those temperatures as we talk about that cooler air moving in. And we take you off to Modoc County, where as early as Sunday, we may see, say around Alturas eastward, a chance for a stray shower Sunday afternoon. But again, it's Monday, Tuesday, right? And then maybe some lingering activity on Wednesday. We're going to say the same thing for the eastern mountains. I'd say Susanville eastward to the south, maybe a chance for a stray shower, maybe even an isolated thunderstorm Sunday afternoon, but the better chances will be Monday and Tuesday with much cooler weather during that time frame too. Here's your Dignity Health Valley neighborhood forecast to the south. Temperatures in the mid-90s, 96 for Los Molinos and Chico, 95 in Hamilton City. Your 7-day forecast for Chico, it's going to be hot today. We're talking about 96, but temperatures dropping after that. We're down to the upper 60s by Tuesday, and then back up to the 71 Wednesday, 77 degrees on Thursday. So temperatures starting to kind of creep back up later next week. Let's take you down to the south, or excuse me, up to the north, out towards Redding, a high of 97, as well as Palisadro, Cottonwood 96, and 95 degrees in Red Bluff. Here's a look at your 7-day forecast for Redding. Yeah, it's going to be getting warm today. You know, remember a couple of days ago I was talking about maybe 100 degrees. Looks like now it's more like the upper 90s, so that's a little bit better. 92 degrees on Saturday, upper 70s Sunday, and there's that rain Monday, Tuesday. By the way, as I mentioned, maybe even an isolated thunderstorm Monday, Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, temperatures start to slowly creep back up. Chances for rain start to diminish on Wednesday, but still a slight chance. And then warming up toward the end of next week. That is your morning update. I'll check in at noon for your latest forecast. Until then, have a great morning.